Hello everyone, and thank you for attending our webinar, How to Achieve Cyber Resiliency Through Efficiency and Automation. I am your host, Mindy Stubbs, Demand Generation Coordinator here at Optiv. Before we get started, a few items of housekeeping. First, this webinar is being recorded and available in the next few days for on-demand viewing. You can see here on the console that we have several resources you can use during or following the webinar. This includes some resources we think you'll find valuable when it comes to your security program. We have our speaker bios and social media sharing buttons. We also have a Q&A chat box. You will find all these same widgets on your toolbar as you scroll to the bottom of your screen. Regarding the Q&A chat box, we will have someone monitoring the chat box throughout the webinar and during the Q&A period. However, we may not get to every question. If we don't answer your question, we will follow up after the webinar. Let me take a quick moment to introduce our speakers, Todd Weber and Rick Basile. Todd Weber is currently the Vice President of Partner Research and Strategy for Optiv Security. This team spearheads Optiv's efforts on testing security technology solutions to help clients make better informed decisions in selecting the correct technology suite. Todd has worked with some of the largest companies in the world developing information security strategies and architectures and has over 15 years in the IT engineering, operations, and IT security field. Rick Basile is currently the Senior Director of Systems Engineering at Fortinet, focusing on the Northeast region of the United States and financial services. Rick has over 25 years of industry experience, but began his career spending 8 years in the United States Air Force as a security specialist and a computer and switching system specialist. Joining Fortinet in 2003, he has held many positions, including leading the financial services vertical, senior engineering responsibilities for the pre-sales field resources, as well as post-sales support organization throughout North America, South America, and Australia. We are very excited to have them both with us. I will now hand it over to our first speaker, Todd Weber.
Thanks, Mindy. Appreciate it. Thanks for everybody for joining. Going to go over a little bit here on the agenda, and then we'll start moving forward. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about the overall problem that we see overall in the marketplace, and then I'm going to hand it over to Rick to talk about some of the Fortinet's security fabric and the intent-based network security solutions that are associated with Fortinet. Then I'm going to go into some specifics on automated response and some of the workflow behaviors that we've seen at some of our clients that have been pretty successful. So overall, what we have as a trend here is we have so many tools and so many technologies that have proliferated over the past several years. We've all bought technologies, and we've all bought newer technologies to support the other technologies. And as trends have changed, as attackers have changed their methods, we've added new tool sets to handle those new threats or new visibility patterns or new recognition patterns, and new remediation solutions as well. And so Momentum Cyber actually did some of these numbers for us. They're looking now at an average enterprise now has about 75 security tools, and that's obviously a lot of tools to manage. That's obviously a lot of consoles to look at, and that's a lot of data points to be ingesting into your SIEM or your analytics platform, however you're doing that. And what that is also coupled with, a real lack of true security resources that are in the marketplace. As you can see here, we have approximately what we think of about an 800,000 shortfall in cybersecurity experts, and projected to hit almost 2 million by 2022. And I don't see that trend changing right now. We're trying to train up as many people as we can. But I think there has to be some more holistic thought processes in the country and how we educate kids and how we educate people through our elementary and secondary education schools to really try and follow up for that shortfall. But in the meantime, how do enterprises solve for it? They have too many tools, but they can't get rid of these tools because they actually need to actually see this, have this visibility, or they need to have these protection schemes. So some of the ways that people are doing it is through automation. There's other ways as well, but automation is certainly one that has become up. But as part of that, with that many tools, they create so many more alerts. And every tool you add adds more alerts and these are alerts that need to be investigated and triaged and to get to a decision point. And we see what a lot of automation tools to either enrich this data or actually try to solve for the problem without a human being touching it. I will say for the most part, there's very few instances where you can really have specific instances happen to where a human doesn't necessarily need to be involved at all. But there are lots of things within data enrichment as well as incident handling that really can automate some of the busy work or the mundane work that is going on out there. Now, what we have seen within these automation platforms is that while they do have the word automation in them, they're not automated. They're very complex. You have to fit in these complete use cases into the playbooks that are there. The playbooks that are there have to fit into your specific instances. And while the technology pieces may be there about the technology A can talk to technology B, that's fine. But these automation tools don't necessarily understand the alert constructs that you're trying to get to, or understanding the risk patterns that certain assets may have or certain assets may not have within your architecture. And what we find is that you have to kind of go through a lot of trial and error functions to do that. And what you don't want to do is spend 4 hours to save 3 hours. So anyway, we've done a lot of this testing for people. We've done a lot for our clients. And we feel that people do need to take the time and effort, either that or hire somebody who's done it for them. But that's one side of that. The other side is that APIs are great to enable this kind of programmatic function and programmatic integration that's been coming out. The problem that we've seen is that APIs are amazing and they've provided wonderful insight into so many of these and opened up a whole new world within security about multiple platforms communicating to each other and ingesting or exporting data sets into other tools to make them better. The problem that we've seen out there in the world is that people many manufacturers use APIs as kind of a common verb, meaning that they think they're all created equal. What we've struggled with is that many of these APIs are not very well documented, and that many of the APIs have limited functionality within them. And they're just not all created equal. And what we feel is that clients really need to do their homework on when somebody says, oh, I have an API and you can do these things with, you can do whatever data insert or data export out of it. Clients really need to do their homework to understand whether or not they'll actually have true capabilities within there. And, there are some unintended consequences of APIs. As, certain systems get updated, well, then that can break an API connection between two pieces of technology. And that's where the automation platforms have really come into play and helpful in that they keep those components, they act as the middleware components and kind of try to version-proof those playbook sides of things as long as you can keep those up to date as well. Anyway, so as you can see, there are definite problems being able to automate your environment. And some of the ways to fix that are, with some of the SOAR platforms, as well as using an overall platform player. And we've seen people gain enormous efficiencies through using some of the larger platform players. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rick here, who's going to talk about Fortinet's solution and their platform on how to solve these problems.
Appreciate it, Todd. When you're looking at the Fortinet security fabric, what others might refer to as a platform, we're looking at a solution set that was built from the ground up to deliver on three main tenets: broad, integrated, and automated. From a broad standpoint, what we're talking about is being able to provide security protections, everything from IoT all the way to the cloud and across multiple vectors for infection. From an integrated solution, and this goes to some of the challenges Todd was talking about, as truly being an integrated platform and leveraging the APIs of multiple products, but doing that development work for the customer. So when we talk about an integrated solution, it might be a vector for infection coming through, say, secure messaging. If we identify an example of an advanced persistent threat, the ability to automate the response and be able to provide protections in real time to other vectors for infections, whether it be web application security, security gateways, the ability to use these different solutions in an integrated fashion to protect against an entire playbook of an attack. And then automated. We need to be able to automate that response. We have to take the humans out of the response to respond in cyber-relevant time. So this is what the three tenets the Fortinet Security Fabric was designed from the ground up to deliver on that message. To deliver the solution itself, we have an entire suite of products. Our next generation firewall. This platform started at a multifaceted, multiple application, hardware accelerated appliance to deliver multiple solutions to the market. Since day one, we've been delivering on the promise of multiple security solutions in a single form factor. That has moved into the virtual software-defined data center and public cloud infrastructure, delivering multiple applications to our customers. Any single application delivered on the FortiGate is best of breed and cost competitive with the legacy point products. The real advantage is the integrated solution delivered by the FortiGate to deliver on multiple functions in a single appliance. Since day one, the platform has made other people's solutions look like just feature sets. We did this when we first delivered intrusion prevention onto the platform, and we're now seeing that in the SD-WAN space. Customers are looking at SD-WAN security as a huge component of being able to deliver on an SD-WAN message, and we're seeing that, again, that entire solution set be just absorbed as a feature set on advanced security products. Well, it's not just the FortiGate solution suite, being able to deliver these integrated fabric solutions into multiple market segments, whether it be large enterprise, cloud security, advanced threat protection, everything from large service providers to distributed enterprise environments, being able to deliver an entire security solution portfolio to our customers. From a product line, the majority of the product line in-house, everything from network security products, multi-cloud environments, whether it be public or private cloud, everything from AWS, Azure, Google, in Oracle, to the software-defined data centers with partners like Cisco and VMware in the NSX and the ACI space. We've made strategic acquisitions over time to be able to deliver secure unified access, whether it be access points, switching, and wireless, to extend the reach of the fabric to be able to provide those security components further and deeper to the network. We fundamentally believe that when you look at things like IoT, the macroeconomics of that space isn't going to allow for those vendors to deliver more memory, CPU, and better software practices. That solution is going to have to be solved by the network. And the deeper we can get into the network to help provide those security solutions, the better. Advanced threat protection, again, an integrated solution to be able to provide those zero-day protections to our customers. Fundamental security partner for our customers. To be a fundamental security partner, we have to understand while working for Fortinet, we want to help deliver every security solution we can to our customers. We understand that those customers and Optiv's customers have made intelligent decisions on current products in their environment and will continue to make strategic decisions with other vendors in the ecosystem. What we've done is we've built our fabric-ready ecosystem, and what this allows us to do is have done the API integrations for our customers. So whether it be from a management and endpoint integrating into the cloud, the API integration has been done for you in Optiv with the Security Fabric and the Security Fabric Partner Program. These integrations, again, are managed by the vendors in the ecosystem and don't require you to have an entire DevOps staff on standby waiting to do the integration of an API that's potentially not full-featured and not well-documented. The other key from a Fortinet Fabric standpoint, and we tend to have a thought process when we're looking at APIs in the security space as a southbound interface. What can I make that platform do when looking at the API? What we've done with our API is our operating system, known as FortiOS, is able to make API calls out. So it's also about northbound interfaces, reaching out into other vendors' APIs to be able to pull dynamic information, to be able to pull threat intelligence information into the fabric and to feed the fabric with information via others' APIs. So it's also the ability of the OS to call out to other APIs. When you take a look by taking advantage of all the components that make up the security fabric, whether they be delivered by Fortinet or by our fabric ecosystem partners, we allow our customers to be able to take advantage of the ability to identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover to incidents in their environment. From an identify standpoint, the ability to look at our environment, not only identify the attacks that are trying to come into the environment, but identify what is the intent-based security we want to deliver to our enterprise. By having visibility to what are my critical assets, what assets have access to other assets. When I deploy my architecture and deploy my security posture, I also want to have easy visibility to understand the posture that I put in place. Is that what's being adhered to? And if it's not what's being adhered to, I want to be able to deliver on the appropriate security posture without having to troubleshoot down to a single point product trying to identify where something's misconfigured. I want to be able to right-click on the fabric and have the fabric remediate that solution immediately across the entire enterprise. So again, visibility across the entire enterprise, visibility not only to the attacks into what my assets are, but also visibility to that the security posture I put in place is actually being adhered to and configured properly. I also need to be once we are able to put in the security posture and identify the traffic flow the way we want to, we need to be able to protect from the known. By protect from the known, Fortinet delivers on our FortiGuard distribution network all of the updates to all of the security solutions we deliver in real time on a regular basis, whether that be IPS signatures, advanced malware signatures, IP reputation databases, all of that information delivered from our global infrastructure, from our threat intelligence in real time to all of our appliances. The FortiGuard Labs and the FortiGuard Threat Research Team have over 200 threat research partners to include NATO, DHS, Interpol, everyone you would expect from a threat information standpoint to have partnerships. Fortinet is one of the 6 founding members of the Cyber Threat Alliance. And again, mature vendors share information. It's what those vendors do with that information that separates them from each other. But moving beyond protecting from the known, we have to be able to detect the unknown. Like other vendors, we do hash-based signatures. Why use a hash-based signature? It's fast and it's accurate. The challenge with a hash-based signature, which we would only use in first pass, is the minute a piece of malware or some sort of an attack has the ability to mask itself, you then quickly need another hash-based signature. I fundamentally believe some vendors and folks in the industry misuse the term zero-day threat. A zero-day threat is not a piece of malware that can repackage itself or has polymorphic capabilities. That's an evasion technique. Evasion techniques should be caught on box in real time. One of the many patents Fortinet holds is what we call CPRL, or Content Pattern Recognition language, and that's basically a one-to-many signature. We're able to catch entire families of malware with a single signature using CPRL. This allows us to stop a threat that has those evasion techniques. It shouldn't be required to go to a service to pull another hash-based signature when that piece of malware can repackage itself in real time on an ongoing basis. By the time you have another hash-based signature, you're already many variants behind. But moving beyond just signature-based protection, whether it be hash-based or family-based, is moving to behavioral analysis and sandbox. Again, with the Fortinet solution and the advanced persistent threat, leveraging things like our FortiSandbox to make sure that all components in the environment, when a true zero-day is identified, and being able to update all components in the fabric that are APT enabled. But even, again, moving beyond VM-based is leveraging multiple machine learning or AI projects. The ability to take our cloud-based advanced AI and provide these signatures and these types of protections in real time. On the FortiGate appliance line, CPRL signatures, even if able to catch entire families of malware, can't be built by a human being. You can't respond in that time. You need to leverage machine-based learning, the ability to put in mass amounts of data in one side of the system, and out the other side of the system, a protection that's 100% accurate and zero false positive. And that's what we've been able to deliver through the FortiGuard Labs to help our customers detect from the unknown. The ability to deliver an automated response. Again, I alluded to earlier, if you're waiting for a human to respond, you're not responding in cyber relevant time. You need to be able to respond without a human. You need to be able to do it without having to worry about having an entire DevOps team on standby ready to take advantage of multiple vendors' APIs. What the Fortinet Fabric allows you to do is define triggers. Triggers could be as simple as you see a threat, identify what you want to be the outcome of that trigger, and then create that action. That action could be something as simple as quarantine a host off of the network or in the cloud environment. It could be something much more complex, like signal off to an AWS Lambda or some sort of a development environment to potentially quarantine off to a non-Fortinet or a non-Fortinet fabric partner solution to be able to help protect against your environment. But again, the ability to automate the response through immediate actions without a human having to be involved. And kind of now that we've used the fabric to identify what our assets are, what threats are attempting to come into our environment, and if we've deployed our security posture properly, provided the ability to protect and detect against the known and unknown threats, and then respond to those threats in cyber relevant time, we now have the ability to recover and report after those attacks. From a cyber resilience standpoint, the ability to understand what is in our environment, but more importantly to be able to stay up and operational during an attack is fundamental. Having a predefined recovery plan when under attack is going to help us understand what the impact and the consequences of a vulnerability being taken advantage of by an attack. Validating our recovery capabilities on a regular basis and continually building on our experiences puts us in a position to better understand our environment, better understand the impact to our business and our reputation when under attack, and how to defend that on a regular and ongoing basis. Assessing and documenting the environment and sharing recovery insights is key to a cyber resilient posture. And the ability to be able to present the material to the audience as appropriate, whether it be a SOC administrator, a senior executive, our CISO, or our auditors. The ability to take all of the fundamental security audit and event information and deliver it to the audience as appropriate. The fabric allows us to do this through the integration of our NOC and SOC capabilities into a true single pane of glass solution. Regardless if you're in a legacy network infrastructure, Security Fabric allows us to do that with this integrated NOC and SOC solution through a single policy framework across all of these networks. Because it's not a legacy or a private or a public cloud, it's your enterprise. Wherever your assets sit, it's where your enterprise and those data assets need to be protected equally across all those environments. From a third-party validation, carries 7 different recognitions of the Gartner Magic Quadrants and is top of the right in the Enterprise and Unified Threat Management Firewall Quadrants. And from an NSS certification, we carry 9 recommended certifications from NSS as we continue to keep and make sure that we use third parties to validate our solution. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Todd to talk about some specific use cases where the fabric has been enabled.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. And as you were talking about on many of those components, some of the outputs that you're looking for are the most common ones that we've seen out in the world as well. So let's look at the common use cases that we've seen to be used within automation functions. To go through in general order, and this is almost in order of how we've seen them done in the field, is to investigate, enrich, and detect. And I'll get into some specifics on this in a minute to show you some really specific examples. But really, this is just honestly looking at things that happen every day and then trying to span across, what I mentioned, those 72 tools. Maybe it's not 72 for your particular instance. Maybe it's only 10. Maybe it's only 15. But, taking very common things and then using automation to help you investigate and enrich the data set that you have in seconds or minutes and seconds, as opposed to lots of minutes and some cases longer, to get to an actual decision of whether or not, is this something we should be doing, or is this something we should be looking at, or is this something I should be preventing? In the contain side, like you said, or as Rick was mentioning about quarantine or URL blocking, or maybe even possibly, account lockout or isolation side. These are pretty common, but they do tend to be a little less used just because it's hard to get to these functions, as Rick was mentioning around cyber resiliency, in the question of, are you going to take things down by, doing this quarantine or blocking? In many cases, maybe you're not, but you do have to take a look at that analysis before you can actually take this contain without a human being involved. And, some are pretty obvious. If you get to something like, you have a desktop talking to a known C2 out there in the world, okay, you don't necessarily need to do too much investigation on that. That's bad. And, you can start doing your isolation functions whether or not it be let's turn on the Windows firewall and prevent lateral infection, or let's communicate to the Fortinet, the FORTIGATE, and say, okay, let's prevent any more outbound communication from that host. And then, do we do a forensic analysis at this point and, and look through the IOCs, or do we just, re-image the box? In many cases, that depends on kind of how many people you have and what sort of forensic capabilities you have the ability to do. The other is also, remediate and drive some efficiency. You can tag the cases for closed-loop analysis, which are interesting, account resets. And some of that can just be driven by simple things like, as Rick was mentioning around some of the threat intelligence side, it's like, do you have, your company's passwords that have been, found in some dark web component or anything else? Well, simple thing is make them reset their password. And then many of those things can be changed. And, or do you read about it on Krebs, 2 weeks after Krebs, publishes, and then you eventually get to it, and, you put it through your governance, and, you can go and take a long time just doing this as human. You're trying to do this at speed and at scale. And then prevent and optimize. As Rick was talking about published IOCs and how do you use those IOCs? Can you take those IOCs and then, okay, as I've seen those from one partner, have I seen any of those IOCs out there out in at least my environment? And what do I do with them if I do? Anyway, these are some of the aspects that we've seen are the common use cases that are used within a lot of our customers. So what are the outcomes we're trying to get to here? The main outcome is, pretty simple, is that you're trying to reduce your time to detect, you're trying to reduce your time to respond, and you're trying to get to a higher efficiency rating within the events that you're responding to, whether or not they be true positive or false positive. You're trying to get to that decision point much faster. And this is an actual customer of ours that I'm taking this use case from, that, we had some pretty tight timelines on developing some of the playbooks, and I'll go through some of the blueprints that we used to develop this, and regardless of the technology that was around, we had to get to these kinds of numbers where we were hugely dropping the volume of alerts as well as the time to detect and our time to respond on these. And you can see where we really started recognizing those functions was sometime in month 3. And it did take us 3 months to really look at the environments, to tune and optimize the playbooks, and using the APIs and programmatic interfaces that were available to us within that environment. And that's really what we were looking to accomplish, and those are the outcomes that we go into any client engagement where we're trying to orchestrate and automate. So I do want to go into some specifics here as we go through, and this is mainly on that the enrichment use case that we were looking at before. And this is an actual one that we did. We actually used some stopwatch analysis function on this. And we feel that, a phishing alert is a pretty common one, actually one of probably the most common ones. And as you get a phishing email alert, you have to follow some specific things. And we tried to get into the mind of a Tier 1, Tier 2 analyst and all the steps that those people go through just to get through their day and just to get to a decision point. Does this need to go up to Tier 3, or can I make a decision here and just mark it as a false positive? How, and to Rick's point about how cyber resiliency happens, your ability to get through this and keep things up and running while you're doing this, and without necessarily impact to the business. And in this particular case, we're just looking at as somebody receives a suspected phishing email, and you can get that to whether or not that's detected by your email gateway, or if that's somebody sends it to a phishing triage inbox. You can enrich those links or other information that are embedded in the email, and then if something was present, detonate the file attachment into a sandbox. If you can go to VirusTotal and see if it's a well-known hash, and then you can hunt for those files across the environment, and whether or not you have Carbon Black or CrowdStrike or Silence Optics or any EDR that's in mind, you can hunt for those files across your environment, and then summarize and report on that to see whether or not this is an impact to the business or not. And you can imagine how much time that takes as a manual effort. And actually, the fastest time we were able to do it using these tool sets, and it's about the same regardless of the tool set they're using. I mean, there may be some various differences here, but 26 minutes was the fastest we were able to do it, and that was us getting pretty fast at it. You know, in running that through an automation platform, we were able to accomplish all of this in 1 minute and 29 seconds. And so if you look at, you know, how many phishing alerts do you get in a year? And then you can really put an easy attached ROI here. I mean, after you get this up and running, you can go, well, I took my response time and enrichment time of 26 minutes down to 1 minute and 29. And you multiply that out by how many you get, and then you can really recognize the efficiencies that are available to you. The next one I wanted to show you was an endpoint alert, another very common one that comes up. You know, and this is really just as you get a triggered alert from whatever your endpoint may be. And I think in this particular case, we were looking at CrowdStrike. And as you get that alert, you can use VirusTotal again to see if this is a well-known hash or not. If it's not, you know, you detonate the file, and we used Fortinet FortiSandbox here, which is a great sandbox to be able to use this. If the option to search for the environment, you search for the file, and you know, you can use other components, whether or not you're using directory services to maybe reset a password or to log somebody off. And then you can query the endpoint to capture the running processes and network connections and logged on users. And like I said, that took us probably 30, and actually, like I said, we got pretty good at this and doing it in a little over 30 minutes. In automated time, we could do this in 59 seconds. Again, you know, you just multiply this out, and you know that your Tier 1, Tier 2 analysts follow, you know, generally this. I mean, they may use different tool sets. They may skip a step here or there. But this is a very common workflow process that happens in many organizations that you can see. And I'm sorry, I got to have this up here a little bit. I went through a couple of these and didn't go through them. I'm sorry, but this is the phishing enrichment use case that I was talking about. And I'll give you some time to take a look at it. And, you know, and then we'll move on to, and you can see the tool sets that we used here and the workflows that we tapped into as well. And in going through and now endpoint enrichment, again, these are the general workflows that we were using and the tool sets that we were using. I apologize, I should have clicked through that. So how did we get to these points? You know, in other words, how do we look at overall environments, and how do we get to a point? Now, we use a blueprint example here, and it looks like I'm going to have to skip across back and forth here a little bit, but that's not going to be a problem. We try to figure out like what overview that we're looking for, the triggers and the inputs that are available, what APIs and services are available, and if you have tool sets like Fortinet, that provides a pretty rich suite of those functions. And then, you know, you look at optional ones, because many of the technologies provide different APIs for different query functions. And then you can look at the general requirements, and then you get to your data sets of what you're trying to do. And as we develop this, you get into a score model as well, and I'm going to have to go back to another part of this here in a second. But as you look at the scoring model, it's also, do these things have varying input and value to your organization? And then how much, you know, based on a level of criticality, as well as a basic list of accuracy as well. And, you know, is this in your these assets in your PCI environment, or these assets in an environment that you care about, or are these assets in maybe an isolated part where you have a different compensating control? And how confident are you in how that these will actually come to fruition, or that you can get these data sets in or out very easily to come to an alert decision? And as I'm going to go back here a little bit to the blueprint example here of a test case where we actually followed through, and this is kind of going through the answers to those questions that I had mentioned before in the blueprint with those confidence scores, as well as the, you know, those criticality scores as well. And then you can go through and you can, using this, you develop your workflow, and whether or not your tool set is, you know, Phantom or whatever it may be for the automation side, and whatever your tool sets may be for, you know, your underlying technology, security technologies. If it's Fortinet, great. If it's something else, it can be something else. But these are the general outputs that we get to. And then what you can do is once you get to these, and this gets to the cyber resiliency function, is I can't underlie how important this was to us, at least in helping us do this, is also looking at a continuous security validation tool. And this is meaningful to the cyber resiliency conversation that we're having, in that, you know, after you get to a certain point and actually you get the controls that you want in place and you get the policies that you want there and the playbooks to where you want them, how good are you continuously responding to these? Or as you get to an operational drift part, meaning that you make changes to the underlying technologies. Are your controls still in place, and are they still working? And that's where we loved some of the continuous security validation tool sets that we were using, because they were really providing value to the cyber resiliency side. And whether or not you're using, some examples of this would be maybe Veridan or Attack IQ. They worked extremely well in two aspects. One, helping us go through the actual test scenarios as we were building them within the playbooks, and helping building those workflows. Because there is a part of this that it can be trial and error. And as that trial and error goes, it's easy to just hit replay on these attack simulation scenarios, to where you can actually keep regenerating the attack over and over again. And you can get that done pretty quick. But the other side, again, is in this continuous validation side, is as you make those changes within your enterprise, which are, obviously, it differs across varying degrees of enterprises, but changes get made, and they get made pretty often. And, especially as the migration to cloud, they'll probably happen even more often. So you want to understand that your controls are still working and still in case after you make changes. And these continuous security validation tools help that. And they can, especially as, point-in-time type solutions like point-in-time assessments and point-in-time, while great meaningful evaluation, they're great at what they do. However, you're usually only doing those maybe once a quarter. So in this way, you can kind of bounce and pivot across that, and you can do some continuous validation on that. And that's this, like I said, it adds tremendously to the actual cyber resiliency side of the platform. And that's what we're trying to get to. So you can take the automation and the resiliency side of validation and build these components together with your underlying technologies. And at this point, I'm going to hand it back over to Mindy to talk about any questions we may have. Hopefully, you guys found this valuable. And right now, we're going to open it up, and we're happy to answer any of your questions. So, Mindy, you want to take it from here?
Great. Thank you both so much. We are now going to open this up for the Q&A portion. So it looks like we've got a couple questions submitted. We will start with this one for Rick. What is the difference between the Fortinet security fabric and a platform from any other vendor?
So it's a good question. So at a high level, what we see from a platform standpoint is they tend to be single vendor, more closed systems. And they also tend to be more bolt-on acquisitions of individual product sets in an attempt to put those different products together to create a more single holistic solution. Whereas the fabric was designed from the ground up to be a more adaptive architectural approach to security, so leveraging more open standards and protocols designed, again, to work and interoperate holistically, but also the ability to include other security platforms into the fabric. So again, from a high level, the platforms, again, we tend to see them more appliance-based, more bolt-on acquisition, and a little more of a closed system solution, where the Fortinet fabric tends to be more of an open solution, more inclusive of not only our entire product set, but again, competitors and or our ecosystem partners.
Great. Okay, so in which of the public cloud offerings are the Fortinet Fabric solutions available?
Okay, so today we support pretty much all of the major cloud providers, so AWS, Azure, Oracle, Google Compute, and actually if there's any global organizations on the line, Alibaba also. So we are in really all 5 of the major global environments. And we're actually where you can get us through the marketplace in all those environments. We are in other public cloud environments, but as infrastructure. So for our customers looking to purchase directly, it'll be those main platforms.
Awesome. Okay, so Rick, how are the security services licensed?
So what we want our customers to be able to do is digest, what their ongoing operational costs would be, right? So with security changing, having security services updated in real time and on a regular basis is hugely important. But also understanding the operational costs of maintaining your environment is super important. So our services are costed on a percentage of the size of the appliance or the different devices deployed in the environment. And then they're also bundled depending on what the deployment application is. So we're never licensing things on the number of users or the amount of traffic flowing through a system. It's basically a very predictable cost based on the deployment and what services are being enabled. There's also no licensing, if you will. Subscription services are things like AV, IPS, botnet reputation database, but advanced features like VPN and SD-WAN and application awareness to enable SD-WAN. There are no licenses for those types of things. Those are in the basic product itself.
Great. Just a quick reminder to our audience that you can submit your questions in the Q&A chat box, but if not, then this will be our last question. So where does Fortinet rank from a market perspective compared to its competitors?
So it depends on how you kind of look at the market, right? So if you look at it from the number of security appliances shipped, we're number one. The number of customers globally, we're number one. If you look at it from a revenue perspective, we actually just moved last quarter into the number 3 position. I'd like to say number one, but I always joke that we don't gouge our customers on pricing. But the reality is all of our development and research is done internally, so we control our costs. But as we continue to build our footprint in our customer base, we'll slowly move into the second and first position from a revenue standpoint. So first from a customer, first from a security appliance, third from a revenue perspective, depending on how you look at the market.
Awesome. Okay, well, it looks like those are all the questions that we've had. And that concludes today's webinar. Rick and Todd, I want to thank you both for participating, and again to our audience. We hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. A follow-up email with slides will be sent out to you shortly, and we'll include links to review today's webinar and the additional resources. Thank you all so much, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.